Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we are talking about the San Francisco 49ers, and I am joined by Anthony Robertson, who's the host of the 49ers Cutback Podcast. And Anthony, if we go back to 2024, that season, Super Bowl hangover, just about everything that could go wrong for the 49ers did go wrong. Christian McCaffrey's out the entire year, a bunch of injuries all over the place. Your first-round wide receiver gets shot in the chest. It was a very just terrible season for the 49ers in a variety of different ways. But heading into this season, a lot of new faces on this team. What is the vibes for the fan base heading into this season? Is the expectation, hey, we're going to get back to be in NFC championships again and competing for Super Bowls? Or are we expecting a little bit more of another rebuilding year where, hey, if we get in as a wild card, that would be a success?
I think a lot of fans are kind of what you're saying there, a wild card thought process. Getting into the playoffs is the main objective because last year was catastrophic. When you think about what happened during the season, Brock Purdy, was good and some of the team was good, but his weapons around him were missing. Brandon Ayuk got hurt halfway through the year. Christian McCaffrey was out. Trent Williams was out. And it was very reminiscent of the 2020 season where the 49ers had went to the Super Bowl in 2019 and then 2020, it was all over the place. And that's exactly what it was for 2024. So I think a lot of the fan base are kind of thinking that direction. Now, there is very much a lot of optimism with some of the new draft picks that have come in and the way that they've looked at training camp. And everyone's saying, what if these guys hit? Then, yeah, Super Bowl is in Levi Stadium this year. Everyone's like, hey, maybe we can make a run. So I think the fan base is cautiously optimistic is the best way I could say it.
Cautiously optimistic. I would describe myself as very optimistic about the San Francisco 49ers. And the more I was just preparing for this interview and diving into the roster and diving into the drafts and kind of just looking at the history of the 49ers over the last 2 years, I just think that this team can, really make some noise. And we can get into some more of that specific parts of the roster that are going to be different, specific things with the coaching staff that are different this year. But before we do that, maybe we start off on the pessimistic side here, where maybe if we're going to look at a reason in, December, hey, why did the season not go that well? This might be the reason. The wide receiver room right now, we all know Deebo Samuel's on Washington right now. Brandon Ayuk still recovering from his knee surgery from last year. What's going on with the rest of the wide receiver room? Because right now it seems like they keep dropping like flies.
Yeah, right now the wide receiver room's not looking good. Juwan Jennings is dealing with a calf strain. He's been dealing with it pretty much the entire offseason. He looked good when he was at training camp, but it's back. Demarcus Robinson, who they brought in free agency from the Rams, he's likely to be suspended for his DUI conviction that he had. So that's probably going to happen. Ricky Pearsall, the good news, he just got back. So he was out with a hamstring and he's back. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of other issues. Jacob Cowing, who's going into his second year, hamstring issue. It's a makeshift wide receiver room right now. You look at the guys that they have, and it's a mixture of young guys and veterans who have traveled all over the place. Russell Gage, Isaiah Hodgins, Eminius St. Brown. These guys have kind of been around the league, and that's who the 49ers are counting on right now. With some fun rookies, but this wide receiver room is definitely not as good as I think they were thinking it was going to be coming into the season. But if the health turns around, Jennings, Robinson, Pearsall, that's a pretty good top three as long as they're all healthy and on the field.
Even though we talked about a little bit earlier about a lot of the injuries that the 49ers had on offense, you mentioned Trent Williams was out, Brandon Ayuk, obviously, Christian McCaffrey was out the entire year. The 49ers offense was still pretty productive in 2024, fourth in the NFL in yards, 13th in points per game. So still like an above average offense at the worst, you could probably say. And I'm looking at this team so far this year. I saw a pass of Christian McCaffrey catching a deep pass from Brock Purdy in practice. The 49ers posted that on their social media the other day. What's the word going on with the Christian McCaffrey right now? Because last year when he, was out for the season, kind of caught everyone off guard and no one was really expecting it.
Yeah, McCaffrey looks good. He looks explosive. And you bring up that pass play. I was in person watching that happen. McCaffrey absolutely smoked the linebacker and got behind everybody. He looks back to form. And there was some question marks about him ramping up, what he was going to look like when he got to training camp. and he's back. The step is there. He's not slower. He's got the spring in his step. He's explosive, and he's just making all the Christian McCaffrey plays. But they are making sure they manage him very much so, more than they have in any other year. They're watching his reps. They're going to keep him fresh. Him, Trent Williams, George Kittle. They're monitoring their reps right now, so they expect McCaffrey to be healthy. And right now, it looks like everything they've been doing, the way that he's paid attention to his offseason workouts, that he's ready to go. I think it's going to be an exciting, explosive year for Christian McCaffrey.
He is definitely the engine that makes everything go with this 49ers team. There is a lot of people were pointing out when Brock Purdy came in and started starting. It's like, oh, this is also kind of the similar timeline when Christian McCaffrey was traded from Carolina and then the 49ers took off. So definitely having him back and healthy is going to be a huge X factor. A big story for the 49ers this offseason was Brock Purdy, who we all know the story of him, Mr. Irrelevant. Comes in, takes the 49ers to the Super Bowl, loses in overtime, obviously. And kind of the question was like, hey, Brock Purdy was getting paid like the cheapest salary in the NFL history for a quarterback or whatever it was, by far, like the 70th highest paid quarterback in the NFL for a few years there. And the conversation was like, hey, can the 49ers actually win if you're paying Brock Purdy like an elite quarterback? Is that something that you think is possible for the San Francisco 49ers team? Because I definitely think if you just look at the numbers and his production, I think he can definitely be an elite quarterback, even with a high salary.
Yeah, a lot of people were questioning what that salary was going to look like. I think he signed a deal that was very fair. It was fair for the football team. It was fair for him. He got paid. He deserved to be paid. He's played really, really well in his time
He
in
was
the
like
NFL.
10th, like he's the 10th highest paid quarterback right now or something, like ninth, 10th, right?
Right. Yeah. Super fair. I mean, and that's the thing. He could have pushed for over $60 million and made it tough on everybody, but he didn't. And part of the reason he didn't is he wants to win. And I think that they have structured this team around him to be able to sustain and be able to win. And I think they are recalibrating. That was John Lynch's word. They're bringing guys in that recalibrate this roster. They are moving on from some more expensive veterans and trying to bring in some young blood and build an offense and build a team around Brock Purdy, but they definitely can win with him because Brock Purdy is not. I know a lot of people throw around a system manager or a game manager. That's not what he is, because when the pocket breaks down, Brock Purdy goes to work and does some of his best work outside the pocket. He is a playmaker. I love watching Brock Purdy go. This is way different than watching a Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's no slight on Jimmy, but that's not what Brock does. Brock is not just a yak monster. He'll beat you downfield. He'll create with his legs. There's so much that he does. So this is well worth the money. I was very excited when they signed Brock Purdy, and I think that they're going to build a very good roster. And I think it's going to start this year. I do think they're going to win a lot of football games, and big reasons why is Brock Purdy. And everyone's got to take into account too Brock Purdy's effect in the locker room, because that guy is a leader of men, and this team definitely takes their cues from him. And that's something that's really big when you're talking about a franchise. And he's going to do a good job of leading this team into the future.
I'm definitely biased when it comes to Purdy because I watched him for 4 years at Iowa State. Like you said, with his mobility, that was something that really jumped off the table every time I watched him at Iowa State, because I was in the crowd for a lot of those games. And a lot of times you would see somebody coming from his blind side, and it looks like one of those plays where you see like somebody's going to come, they're going to hit the right arm, and it's just going to be a strip sack, and it's going to be like a huge mess of a play. And then Purdy just had this excellent awareness to just spin out of that and then get out of the pocket and make a play. And to kind of just tell you about his importance, just from the college perspective, the next year after he leaves Iowa State, the team goes 4-8, and then they fire their entire offensive staff. So that kind of just shows you how important he was, even dating back to his college days. And I also think too, you talk about the contract, and like we could say this with any single quarterback in the NFL right now. Like I think his money's pretty comparable to Jalen Hurts. It's pretty comparable to Jordan Love. And no one's saying, hey, you can't win about Jordan Love if he's making this much money. Hey, you can't win with Jalen Hurts if he's making this much money. And I also think, too, a big reason why he deserved every penny he got there is he saved Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's jobs. Like, if he doesn't come in 2022 and then the team takes off and goes to the NFC Championship game, like if he just acts like a normal seventh round quarterback, like they probably lose their jobs because they gave up a bunch of stuff for Trey Lance. He was an absolute bust. And like Brock Purdy's been a miracle. So like is that something that's kind of talked about like around the 49ers is like just if like what if Brock Purdy doesn't come and like, would there have been a just a seat change if things fell apart there with the Jimmy G Trey Lance quarterback combo?
Yeah, I think so. I've definitely heard the rumblings that, the 49ers lucked into this. And I don't know how much of it's really luck, but when you consider that they had Trey Lance and that, like you said, it did not go well. Trey Lance did not work out for the 49ers at all. And if they didn't have Brock Purdy, if they did not hit on a seventh round pick, Mr. Irrelevant, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are probably not in Santa Clara right now. They're probably somewhere else. And the 49ers would have went through a regime change because you can't miss that big on quarterback and be able to withstand it. The thing was, when Brock Purdy got drafted, the 49ers knew right away. Kyle Shanahan went to Jed York and told him during training camp, one of the first practices at training camp, that Brock Purdy was going to be one of those guys. And they were very hyped about him, and they were already figuring out a way to keep him on the roster because he was competing with Nate Sudfeld at the time for quarterback 3. But they knew they needed him, and he's proven it every single day. So, yeah, he saved Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And a lot of it's because of the things you talk about, him being able to have that awareness to just make someone miss. He just did it to Nick Bosa at practice. He just did it, which is hilarious. Bosa had a free shot. Of course, Bosa's not going to hit him, but Purdy, spun out and just hit a player down the field for another good gain. He just does it all the time. He's just something different about him compared to a lot of guys who just sit in the pocket and take those big hits.
I also think too, just someone that watched again, someone watched him 4 years at Iowa State. You could tell he kept playing the same way, but like he definitely did look a lot slower on the NFL than he did play Big 12 football. So kind of telling me right there that he was able to kind of evade Nick Bosa. It tells me he's probably getting a little bit more adjusted to the speed of a lot of these, insane freaks of nature athletes on defensive lines and in the linebackers rooms. I want to get back to Shanahan here for a second because he's going to be entering I believe it's his 9th season now in San Francisco. He has a 70-62 record with the 49ers. He's missed the playoffs half of the years he has been with the 49ers. If the team has a rough start to the season and they end up finishing outside of the playoff picture on the bubble, is it going to start getting to the point here where we start putting Kyle Shanahan on the hot seat?
I think if they did miss the playoffs this year, with the money they've spent on guys like Robert Saleh and some of the investments they've made in the coaching staff, I do believe that at that point, Kyle Shanahan could start getting a little bit warm his seat. For the most part, it's been completely cool. I mean, he hasn't been having anything to worry about. Him and John Lynch and Jed York have been all in lockstep. They've done everything together. But I think at that point, you're investing a lot of money if you're Jed York and a football team that you expect to win a lot of games. And if you're not competing in the playoffs, you're not really having a chance to do your ultimate goal, which is win a Super Bowl. And they've made no qualms about this. This 49ers football team every year is expected to compete for a Super Bowl. Now, I do believe that they think that, getting to the playoffs with this roster, with the rookies, and a lot of the young guys that they've brought in, that would suffice keeping him off the hot seat. But yeah, if they don't make the playoffs, there's a good chance that Kyle Shanahan would start heating up. I don't think they'd fire him, but I think that they would definitely light a fire under him where, hey, you better get it done in 2026, or we might have to make some other decisions.
I agree with that. Obviously, you know more about the vibes of the team than I do, but it feels like if the 49ers were to say fire Kyle Shanahan on a Monday, he's probably getting hired by like a Miami or an Indianapolis or something on the next Tuesday. So that's also another thing you have to factor in with him is that like how many teams around the NFL. I mean, however high you want to rank Kyle Shanahan in your best coaches the NFL ranks, I think he's definitely in the top 10, probably close to the top 5. Like a lot of teams in the NFL would trade, their current coaching staff or any coaching staff Kyle Shanahan would bring in. I want to talk about his coaching staff a little bit this year because something about the 49ers is basically since the first year they go to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. I can't remember the exact timeline, but Robert Saleh ends up leaving the 49ers. He has one of the best defenses in the NFL when he's the defensive coordinator at the 49ers. He goes over to the Jets. the 49ers defense falls off a cliff, and they've been really trying to figure out who the heck they should have run this defense for the last few years. They've ran through a few different coordinators, and even too, Robert Saleh, if you look at his just importance of the defense with the New York Jets, they fire him in like week 5 or whatever it was, and all of a sudden that Jets defense turns into one of the best ones in the league into a below average defense for the rest of the year. So how important is it to have Robert Saleh back in the building and running this defense? Because basically since he left, the defense has kind of been the weak spot of this team.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan was very, very much wanting Robert Saleh to come back, this season. And part of the reason was he built, the defense with Robert Saleh. They built the team together, coming together in 2017, and they got there in 2019. They figured out the secret sauce to get this defense where they wanted it. They had already somewhat kind of translated and evolved a little bit from Pete Carroll's defense in Seattle, but that was the basis for it. And then when Robert Saleh left, and it was after the 2020 season that he left to go to the New York Jets, the defense, it took on a different makeup. D'Amico Ryans actually took over, did a pretty good job for a couple of years, but then he's gone. And once you were without Saleh and D'Amico Ryans, it fell off a cliff. It just hasn't been as good. Steve Wilkes, he helped the 49ers get to the Super Bowl, but they had some inconsistency stopping the run. It's a little bit difficult there. Last year was a complete dumpster fire with Nick Sorensen. It just wasn't good. They just haven't been able to marry the front and the back end together. So this is going to restabilize, but it's also going to bring energy. The first two coordinators the 49ers had under Kyle Shanahan, D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, brought energy, and especially Saleh. And that is exactly what the 49ers need right now. They need an energy. They need somebody that knows what they're doing, X's and O's wise, but can kind of give this defense some juice. There was no juice last year. The only guy who brought juice was Drake Greenlaw. He's not on this team anymore. Of course, Fred does Fred things, but it's just different when you have that guy kind of feeding off of him. So they needed somebody, and now they have it in Robert Saleh. So it's not a player, it's a coach. I think he's going to transform this defense. I've already seen it at training camp. They are far better against the run already, and that's tremendous news. But this defense is going to be a lot better. And you talked about it. When they fired him from the Jets fell off a cliff, and there's a big reason why. Robert Saleh is one heck of a defensive coordinator. I think he's going to restabilize and then reestablish this 49ers defense as one of the best in the league.
You also brought up D'Amico Ryans there. I forgot about him because he was the DC the year that Brock Purdy, has his wrist injury in the NFC Championship game. Then he goes off to Houston, and then the defense really kind of fell off there. So it wasn't immediately with Saleh left, but you're right, though. You need to have a good defensive coordinator. You have to have a good leader on the defensive side of the ball. And that's kind of a thing, I think, when people are looking at the 49ers this year. This is really one of the question marks I think a lot of people have with the team is, they do have Robert Saleh back. That's a plus. But Greenlaw is gone. Travarius Ward is gone. But I saw what the 49ers did in the draft. I like a lot of their picks. The first 5 picks in this draft, they go defense, 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 defense. Who are some of these draft picks, and what's kind of the buzz going on with them so far in training camp?
Yeah, huge buzz. Mikael Williams, number 1, the first round draft pick, 6'5", over 260 pounds, and he can move. I was watching him. I was probably 20 feet away from him doing his defensive line drills. And that is a big man moving really fast. And they're super excited about Mikael Williams. He's right now a day 1 starter opposite of Nick Bosa, and they have big expectations for what he's going to be able to do. They got Alfred Collins from Texas in round 2, and that's a huge run stopper. He's moving. He's figuring things out right now. Upton Stout, they got. He was actually their second pick of the 3rd round, and he's been playing starting nickel corner for a lot of snaps, especially once Renardo Green went down with a hamstring injury. He's looked really good. And then you've got Nick Martin, the linebacker. He's been playing. He's figuring in. Right now, Nick Martin's not one of those guys that's worked into the starting lineup. The other guys are probably going to start. And then the guy just outside in the top 4, CJ West, he has been probably the most impressive of the defensive linemen, especially over the last week when they got in pads. Violent hands and just absolutely walking people back into the quarterback. I think he's a fun player for the 49ers, but that front 7 has been redone, and they are a lot different than they were last year, and those young players are a big reason why. Size and speed was the name of the game for the 49ers draft.
A lot of the things I look at with the 49ers, too, that they kind of parallel, or maybe not parallel is not the right word, but they kind of have the same trajectory as the the division rival the Los Angeles Rams have, where what was it like a few years ago, right after the Rams go to the Super Bowl, they have a year from hell where they have a bunch of injuries and it looks like, oh my God, Stafford's washed. John McVay's going to retire and go work for Fox or something. Aaron Donald's going to retire. This team's, just barren and the future's just a mess. But then what happened the last few years? The Rams went into the draft. They hit a bunch of home runs. They got guys like Puka Nacua, that was a gem. They got Jared Verse on the defensive line, who was an absolute stud in the first round. So I'm kind of looking at that same stuff here for the 49ers, because even too, I was going through some past few drafts too. A lot of other guys, like you mentioned Renardo Green, a lot of other guys from these previous drafts too are still on this team, and I think they're going to develop and be a lot of really good, maybe not superstars, maybe not all pro players, but I do think they can be really consistent contributors on both sides of the ball. I should have mentioned this or asked this earlier too when we were talking about the offensive side of the ball. Are the 49ers going to miss Deebo Samuel and his leadership heading into this year? Because that was the thing, too, about Deebo. He's obviously a terrific playmaker on the field, but he was also a guy that was leading the team out of the tunnel every single game.
I think that there's probably an element to that that's going to be different because he was a big energy type leader. Him and Trent Williams are definitely emotional leaders and were a big part of kind of pushing that offense. But they have guys, right? They have George Kittle that can kind of do that same thing. Jawan Jennings, I don't know if he had the room to do that with Debo kind of ahead of him, but Jawan Jennings plays with that kind of energy and kind of brings that energy as well. So I think that they're going to replace it. I really do. It will be different though. This team cannot be the same without Deebo Samuel. His demeanor, the energy he brought to the offense, the explosive nature he played with. We're gonna miss Deebo Samuel. That's just the way it is. But I do think that they've prepared and they've got guys who are kind of ready to step up into those roles. And I think it'll be fun seeing a guy like Ricky Pearsall. He's got a lot of juice and a lot of energy that I don't think people really know yet. And I'm excited to see people kind of see him spread his wings a little bit when he gets a more prominent role. And I think his leadership's going to come out a little bit as well.
Completely agree. Looking at the rest of this division in the NFC North, the Rams are basically the favorite right now. Everyone's picking them. I know you're going to be very optimistic about your team, the 49ers that you cover. If there was going to be like a really surprise division winner in this division, is it more likely going to be like the Seahawks or the Cardinals? Because I don't know. I kind of like what both of those teams did over the offseason.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is I felt like the NFC West, every one of the teams had a good draft. They've brought in good free agents. And so I was, talking about this for a while. I'm like, man, these guys are good. And Arizona, their question mark solely lies with that quarterback situation with Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray comes out and plays consistent, good football, that team is dangerous because Jonathan Gannon has drafted some really good defensive linemen and good defensive players over the last couple of years. I think that they're one of those sneaky, scary teams. But I think that Seattle has the best defensive line out of any of the teams in the NFC. And I know that the Rams have Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, and they're good. But that Seahawks defensive line, when you've got Leonard Williams, and they're just scared. Leonard Williams scares everybody. I mean, when you have a guy that can throw Trent Williams around, you got someone special. So I think Seattle's defensive line's the best. So they're probably the most dangerous, especially early in the season. We'll see how that offense picks up now that they've got a Kubiak running the offense and Sam Darnold pulling the trigger. But it's going to be interesting for sure. I think all four teams are in the mix to win the division. I know the Rams are the favorites, but I do think all four teams are in the mix.
It's honestly going to be just like which it probably is every year, you could say this, but it's going to be a schedule thing. It's going to be an injury luck thing. Like if the 49ers get like 10 more guys hurt or something like that, maybe things aren't looking good. That's maybe a few wins that could go the other way for all those teams in the division there. Seattle, obviously, just a lot of, question marks on the offense, positive question marks. Sam Darnold on a big contract. Cooper Kupp's coming in. Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably finally going to get a chance to play the role of where he was drafted as a first round pick. Offensive line, a whole lot of question marks there. Those are probably the negative question marks. Then like Arizona, like you said, like can Kyler Murray be consistent, but can he also unlock like all of these amazing targets? Because Trey McBride last year was absolute stud, but he didn't score a touchdown until like week 15. Marvin Harrison was touted as this, generational wide receiver prospect, and then he did not look good this next year. So it's like if Marvin Harrison plays like the guy that he was drafted, like I don't know, Cardinals like you're right, like all four teams can win this division.
Yeah, the Cardinals are always scary. But what's interesting about them is, and I thought it would change with they got a new coach with Jonathan Gannon, is they always start out strong and then fall off. I don't know exactly why, but you get to about the middle part of the season and Arizona disappears. And the only thing that I can think is it's Kyler Murray because he's been the consistent, but they've got the weapons. And Marvin Harrison's put on a lot of muscle. He's transformed his body. He looks like he's prepared for NFL football. Trey McBride's probably my second favorite tight end in the NFL behind George Kittle. I think that he's a real stud. And so, yeah, they're fun. They're dangerous. I don't know. I never go into a game with Arizona and think the 49ers are going to for sure win it. I don't think there's any sure locks, especially Arizona. For whatever reason, they just play everyone tough. It's going to come down to that schedule against other teams. And like you said, this strength of schedule, which is going to hurt the Rams the most. The Rams have a really tough schedule this year. And Matthew Stafford's already starting with some back issues. Jimmy G at the helm. And I know as a 49er fan, give me Jimmy G all day over Matthew Stafford. We want Jimmy G playing in those games.
I love too how Devontae Adams like left the Raiders because he was like, Jimmy G is going to ruin my career and get me killed on the football field. And then all of a sudden his nightmares are just coming back to life this training camp where he's got Jimmy G throwing him passes in practice all day. So it's funny how things just come full circle. It's a small world, as they say. And this has been amazing. Loved all of your insight here talking about the 49ers. Do you want to tell us where we can find all of your work and then we'll head out of here?
Yeah, 49ers Cutback, wherever you listen. If you want to listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it's available there, available on YouTube. I pretty much do daily content. You can come check that out and, get interactive, get involved. It's a lot of fun. And I'm excited for anyone that comes through. Even if you just want to share your love for Brock Purdy, come do that because we love Brock Purdy on the channel. I'll throw on my 13 jersey and we'll talk about him.
Like, yes, man. We all love Brock Purdy, man. You're giving updates almost every single day about training camp. You got all the insights. Love to hear it. Again, everyone out there, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment what you thought about this video. What do you think the 49ers are going to do this year? Are they going to make the playoffs? Are they going to be disappointing? Are they going back to the Super Bowl? Would love to hear all your guys' thoughts. And thank you very much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.